Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast. Today I'm speaking with Nicole Bansal, who is a marketer and short-term rental host using Hospitable. We're going to learn a bit more about her expansion with short-term rentals and how she finds marketing them. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Okay, hello Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Sweet. So to start off, Nicole, maybe you can introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us about who you are, what your short-term rental portfolio looks like, how you got into short-term rentals in the first place.
Yeah, so I'm Nicole Bansal. I'm based in San Diego, California. But in my heart, I'm truly still Canadian. I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada. Um, I am a part-time marketing consultant for B2B tech companies. That's kind of my day job. Used to be full-time, and thanks to the short-term rental business is now part-time. And then I also am an Airbnb owner and host. So I own three Airbnbs. I actually have four that I arbitrage, and then I manage three others for other folks um, that I enjoy working with. I take on very few co-hosting clients. I've learned that that's not something that I particularly love doing.
Nice, okay. Are all of your properties based down in the US, or you still got some up here in Canada as well?
So no, actually, I do have one in Vancouver, Canada. It's actually like a two unit, so it's three listings, and then I have one that I own over in Savannah, Georgia, that I manage remotely as well. So I am certainly someone who believes in out of state investing and remote management.
Cool, awesome. And obviously, you've got a bit of a background in high growth startups as well. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that and your kind of experience on the marketing side of things.
Yeah. So I've always worked in telecommunications or tech adjacent sort of companies.
Hmm.
When I moved to San Francisco, I knew I kind of wanted to get into Silicon Valley and tech and got really lucky. Got to work at a couple of great startups. One that I joined when it was around 60 people. It was in the advertising tech space. And I worked there for over 5 years. We grew that company from like, I think 60 people to almost 700 by the time that Blackstone Equity, which a small name that some people might recognize, acquired. And then I got to go work for another one that similarly sized, Series A funded, that DoorDash acquired. And so I have worked at a few small startups that have grown to large scale and then gone through big acquisitions and really, really enjoyed that work. And still to this day, like love marketing is one of the reasons I still do part-time marketing consulting. And that's how I think I really, luckily for me, got the funds to get started in the short-term rental space,
Hmm.
but realized that it wasn't something that I wanted to do full time forever, especially as I started having kids. I have a 3-year-old son, and then I have another baby on the way right now.
Oh,
And
congrats.
so for me, I knew I wanted to become more time flexible.
Nice, okay. And taking that experience from the startup world, have you kind of, has it influenced your business decisions on the short-term rental business at all as well? Do you take lessons from that part of your life and put it into kind of property management as well?
Definitely. I think the lessons that come to mind immediately for me, one is just building systems and standard operating procedures so that you're not spending a bunch of time doing the same thing every day. And so, certainly a lot of our work is templatized in terms of our booking messages or check-in, check-out messages, our, reminders to the cleaning staff and automating a lot of the systems that go into the day-to-day management of Airbnbs. I spend very little time on day-to-day management. I'd say a lot of my time these days goes towards acquisition, setup, furnishing, design, and marketing and pricing management. I spend very little time around guest comms and the day-to-day of operations. I think the other piece is obviously marketing. I think like
Yeah.
being able to build a moat in terms of thinking through what will make someone choose my property over the one next door and ensuring that you are thinking about who is my buyer, or what we in marketing we call ICP, my ideal customer persona. And so I really
Hmm.
think about whenever I acquire a new property, who is going to be booking this house? Is it families? Is it someone who really values budget? Like budget is their biggest concern, so they want to be able to sleep a lot of people in the property. So that could be families, but that could also be maybe like bachelorette groups. Whoever it is, their biggest concern is how many bed, how many people can we comfortably sleep in this home with the amount of beds and bathrooms that we have. So I have some homes that focus more on a value traveler,
Yeah.
whereas say like a luxury family is going to be very amenity focused, and more luxury experience focused. So thinking about who is the buyer for the property and optimizing my setup in terms of what I'm offering at that property for that. I have a property that in I have two different properties in San Diego that look very different from one another. One has all the amenities: pool, hot tub, yard, children's playground, barbecue, fire pit, like everything you could think of. Um, and then I have another one that's very similarly sized. It's a 5 bedroom, 3 bath versus a 4 bedroom, 2 bath. But that one, because of the location it's in and who I'm targeting, has no yard, no amenities, no
Hmm.
barbecue, none of that. But it can sleep a lot of people. And so I really thought through who is the buyer for each property and priced it accordingly. And so that's huge. Like using data, using competitive intel. So looking at your competition to inform this is the strategy I'm going to use on this property, and then making iterations based on your feedback loop, which is your bookings.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you obviously you're talking about, I guess, positioning the properties for certain audiences and the ideal customer profile. How are you doing that in your listings? Because I think that's kind of the main place that you can communicate with guests, essentially, right? How do you bring through that positioning into your Airbnb, Booking.com listing, wherever it is that you're bringing in guests?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously your photos will speak volumes, but just in
Yeah.
the way what you're highlighting, I think, about the property and the way that you're talking about it, everything is bullets, people scan. So your summary is, okay, if it's a property that's a luxury property, I want to lead with all those amenities. Like, here's everything that's included. Make sure they're not missing those pieces in the photos or buried deep in the listing. So if there are key amenities that differentiate you from the property next door, making sure you're leading with those in the listing. One of my properties is in an area of San Diego that actually does not charge the transient occupancy tax, which is 12%. Huge
Well,
savings for the end user. And so I highlight that right off the bat for that property, because that will get me booked over a property like 2 blocks away because I'm just barely outside that border. And so calling out those key factors, I guess I would say, depending on who you're catering to, right at the top. Sleeps, like in the title, for the properties that sleep a lot of properties, my description is sleeps 20, and then whatever else I want to add. So that's the first thing that catches their eye. That's a value property that just sleeps a lot of heads and beds. And so just making sure that those are surfaced in your title and your summary, and that they're not getting buried in your listing description. And then making sure the photos speak to that as well.
nice. Okay. And then across your listings and across your rental portfolio, are you building a brand, or are they very much all their very own individual properties and they have their own kind of look, feel, everything? And they're very separate from each other.
Yeah, I think the properties themselves do have a separate look and feel from each other and do feel quite different from one
Hmm.
another. Because I'm again trying to figure out who is the buyer for this type of property, who's the
Yeah.
renter, I guess I should say. Because I have one property I'm bringing online this month that's 5 blocks from the beach, which is the first one I have that close to the beach. And for that one, I am going to focus in on amenities I've never offered before. I'm actually going to have beach cruisers available and like a wagon
Mm.
with beach toys. And so I think that, and the furniture vibe will feel more coastal, and the decor will feel very coastal, beachy, which is different than any of the other properties I've done. So I'd say I try to cater the branding within the property really to who I think will stay at that property. Now I certainly do have a corporate brand for my own LLC, but I think unfortunately, in this space, there is not a huge loyalty space to the company, maybe to the
Yeah.
property. I've had people come back and stay at that property multiple times, but I'm not at the stage where I have 100 or 500 properties where someone's going to come and want to stay at the Westin again. And so I do really cater to the brand aesthetic that I think will resonate the most with the traveler for that property.
Nice. That makes sense. And so thinking about in that, that range of, I guess maybe it's 1 to 7 properties or something like that. And what's kind of a good, maybe low budget marketing action that hosts should be doing today? If they don't really been thinking about doing marketing for their properties and getting themselves out there more, what would you recommend that hosts do?
Yeah, I think I can think of two immediately. The
Yeah.
first is, your post checkout message, letting them know that you have a discount, like a 10% return customer discount if they ever want to
Mm.
book again. If you have a direct booking site, including your direct booking site to allow them to book again. I think that's a really easy, low cost marketing tactic you should definitely be employing. Another that I'm a big fan of is editing your photos. I actually go in, even though I pay professional photographers a lot of money to take really good photos, I usually often will do a second edit and improve or add twilight in using AI. So I've taken some of my photos that I've had photographers take, and I thought the sunset wasn't good enough. And I actually go into Canva and I'll make the sunset look better, or I will add an image onto the TV, like a big Netflix logo if they haven't done it. I might change some of the lighting to be. I found slightly more saturated photos do well on Airbnb, so I might change the saturation levels a little bit. And photos are like I think one of the number one drivers of bookings, and so that is I think a little marketing tip that everyone should employ if you have an extra hour or two is go improve your photos.
Nice, yeah. Photos are definitely high up on the list for B&B in terms of kind of ranking. We know that for sure. So kind of switching up a little bit. So obviously, we know you flip homes, you operate short-term rentals, you help people pursue their financial freedom. What is the moment you realize real estate could be more than just a side project for you and really be, a big chunk of your life?
Yeah, I think it's probably after there's like two moments. One is after I purchased the first
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb. Like I was hooked. Like I got that
Yeah.
property in September and brought it, we hustled to get it online as quickly as possible because we had a mortgage to pay. By
Mm.
November, I was buying another one. I was like hooked immediately. I like loved doing that and realized I wanted to do more of it. Um, the thing with I got started in like 2022, 2023. It's like a high interest rate environment. The thing with getting
Yeah.
started during that time is I don't make a ton of cash flow off either of those properties. They definitely cover their own bills. They give me a little bit of extra cash, but for someone who has worked in corporate marketing at high pay startups, by no means are they replacing my income. And so I think I knew I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't going to keep getting more loans. Like at some point, lenders are like, "You're tapped out." I didn't want to go getting 10% DSCR loans because I couldn't find properties that cash flowed at that rate.
Mm.
And so, the moment that I realized that maybe this could be more in terms of I could leave corporate a little bit faster was actually when I got into rental arbitrage. And when I started renting properties that I would then furnish myself and list on Airbnb. I am terrible about doing my books. It's not something I've outsourced yet. I do it myself. My husband is a CPA, and so he'll help me, and we'll kind of like I will say we're getting better at it, doing it more regularly. But the first year I got a rental arbitrage, and in December, I finally did my books and I saw how much money I'd made on that arbitrage. I realized, wow, this is a really quick and easy path to leaving a full
Mm.
time job.
Nice, I love that. And you're obviously using Hospitable to help you manage your properties as well. What made you choose to use Hospitable in the first place? What was the thing that made you go, I need a software, and that software is Hospitable?
Yeah, I was actually using a competitor at the time,
Okay.
and it was a lower tier subscription at that competitor where I didn't get like the full package of the kind of features and benefits that they have. And so I knew I needed to start upgrading because I was starting to scale the business up. I only had like one or two, I think I had two properties at the time, and was starting to scale up and needed more features. And so rather than just upgrade with the tool I was using, I decided to go on a search and look at some of the other tools. And I'd certainly heard about Hospitable. And at the time, what I loved about Hospitable was there was no like, you're a low tier customer and you're a high tier customer. It's like if you pay for Hospitable, you kind of get everything included. And that was what sold me on it at the time was, hey, I can sign up for this tool and everything's included. I don't need to worry about paying more. It's one price, and the price actually obviously decreases also per unit or per home as you level up in terms of how many properties you're bringing online. And so that's what's got me to sign up. Now, there's other things that have got me to stay over the years that I love about the tool, but that's what got me to sign up originally.
Interesting, funny. Yeah, for anyone listening, I guess, that isn't a user, you're on a legacy tier, or you were on a legacy tier. I'm not sure if you still are. And so obviously now we're split into three separate plans, and that's how you kind of come on different tiers, and depending on which features you need, obviously. Cool. So just thinking about that, and obviously what Hospitable helps you to automate as well, I guess. Imagine you didn't have all the automation, you didn't have all the help, but you could have one thing. Like, what one thing would you automate? Like, what's the pain in your side that would be too much manual work, that you wouldn't be able to do without Hospitable?
Oh, it's the guest messaging, like
Mm.
every facet of guest messaging. I'm going to say all of it, but definitely like the AI, the built-in AI for guest messaging, but also the automations for guest messaging. Like that is the piece that I could never live without. That would take way too many hours in the day.
Nice. Okay. And what do you think is like the most important aspect of guest communication and guest messaging and like getting that right?
Oh, I think like empathy and hospitality.
Mm.
So I think the most important thing to get right is actually the thing that I think a lot of people get wrong and is really easy to get right. It is taking a little bit of time to craft a message that is going to make your customer, your guest, feel like you are in fact providing customer service and you're in the business of customer service and you care about how their stay goes and you care about them. Um, and this isn't just a transactional, like you gave me money and you stay here and you move on with your life. And I think that's why I think Hospitable probably saves me so much time is not only does it automate the messages that are a bit more transactional in nature in terms of, hey, thanks for booking, here's some information you need to know for your check-in, here's your code, here's the house manual, here's how things work. But when guests have questions or they have concerns that come up, uh, I don't have to spend a lot of mind share thinking about writing something that is eloquent, that feels like empathetic, that feels like great customer service. I can actually write like a really crude message. Today, I had to send a plumber out to a property, and I literally just wrote in really quickly, hey, the plumber's going to be there from 11 to 1. And then I used the little, improve with AI button that Hospitable has, and it
Mhm.
made it sound like, hey, thanks for being so flexible. The plumber's going to be there around this time. Please let us know if there's any issues. Thanks again, and made it sound just so much better. It is the way that I would want it to sound, but I don't want to take the time to draft. And so that is like the feature that I could not live without because I think providing a great customer experience starts with like your messaging. And it is important to get that right and make people feel like they are heard, that you care about their stay. And so that's like core for me.
Nice, I love it. So thinking ahead to, I was going to say next year, but we're recording this at the start of December, maybe releasing at the start of January. For the year ahead, so for 2026, I should just say, what are you excited about? What are you focused on? Are you looking to grow your portfolio, manage for others? What's your big focus for the year?
Yeah, I'm really excited to scale. So for me, just over the last year or so, I've transitioned from full-time corporate marketing to part-time marketing. And I'm realizing, I am one person, and unless I want to hire people to build a marketing agency, which I don't really want to do, that I have a huge limiting factor on really how much I can earn or make through my marketing business because I think I just really want it to be me consulting. Whereas I'm finding with my Airbnb business, I can really scale up without putting in much more extra time. There's a lot of time that does go in at the front end when I'm doing the initial purchase or rental process and then the setup and the design, but one and building the listing and optimizing it. But once I've got it off the ground, each property typically only is taking me a couple 1 to 2 hours a week. I have a VA in the Philippines who helps a ton. I might bring on another VA, and I can really scale that business without it requiring without it hitting the limiting factors of me and my hours, and needing to bring in specialized talent in terms of like finding other people who can do AI marketing, which is what I do. I can just find another VA and train them pretty easily and have that business running on autopilot, especially also as I expand my family.
Nice, I love it. That's very exciting. Okay, so Nicole, final question, an easy one. If people want to connect with you, maybe they want to get some tips from you, maybe they want you to help manage their property, where can they go to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Nicole Bansal, and then you can also find me on Instagram at Bougie Bansal.
Perfect, easy enough. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Nicole.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay, thank you for listening to today's episode. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and listen out to a new episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast coming soon.